Okay, we're back to part 2. This is our fuse blowing schematic. Take a good look at your schematic, and we're going to look at three possible parts of the circuit which will intermittently short to ground. We have the taillights, we have the taillights and the parking lights on. There's our scope. There's our current flowing through. You can see it, about 3 amps. Let's take a look at spot number 5, right where we're hooked up, where we've always been hooked up. We're going to see what happens when our 5 spot goes to ground. We're still clamped like we were originally. Nothing's changed. Purple's on the N31 pin coming out of the underdash, and all the other guys are the same. So let's get to the scope and see what happens. That's our reconnaissance clamp, which we're going to do something with. Okay, so we got burgundy, we got gold, we got blue, and we got red and green flowing through the 20 amp test light. Obviously, the 20 amp test light's not going to talk about why the 20 amp test light doesn't light. It's because it's sort of in series with the rest of the normal car circuit, and that circuit is drawing about 3.5 amps, and in a series circuit, the load that the current is always the same, so 3.5 amps wouldn't light the 20 amp light, but the normal lights do light. So nonetheless, when the circuit goes to ground, it does light the 20 amp light. So anyway, let's go to spot 5. Let's see what happens. Something happened. Okay, let's stop the scope, and we're going to see something. If we were on this car and we were shaking harnesses and we saw this, we would say, hey, there's something funny happening. What could we infer? We're high. We are high on blue. We're high on green. Okay, how are we on burgundy? Okay, and we're low on burgundy. Okay, so we look at our schematic, and we know that the current stopped flowing through burgundy. Nothing flowed through red and yellow, obviously, because we look at the circuit coming from the relay. It flowed through I1 through the blue clamp into D3, out of the underdash fuse relay on F9. As I said, remember the current, it's kind of a hog. Right at spot 5 is where the circuit went to ground. Okay, so if we were in this situation, we're going to have to say we got to get on our reconnaissance clamp. That's the clamp I was telling you about. I don't know if you heard, this kind of funny, the first video I shot, when I mentioned just the word, when I mentioned a reconnaissance clamp, a helicopter started flying over me. Anyway, I hope maybe you got a chuckle out of that. I hope. Anyway, you never lose your sense of humor. Anyway, right now I would say to myself, well, I know it's I know where it's going to ground, where it's not going to ground. I'd have to say that coming out of F9, most likely is where the thing's going to ground. So I'm going to take that reconnaissance clamp, which is right now on pin N31. I want to move it. I want to move it down on the floor wiring harness. I'm going to move it to the pretty much close to where it junctions into the rear, and see what happens. Okay, we're back on the scope, And we're in situation 5. Look at your schematic. And we have placed the clamp, so we want to kind of watch the floor wiring harness to see what that clamp does in the same situation. So we're on situation 5. Stop the scope and roll it back, and now we see some elevation. We're high on blue, we're high on, let's see if we're high on green, which we expect, because that's our main, let's kind of separate, partition these. We're high on blue, we're high on green, we're low on gold, we're low on red, and we are low on burgundy. And I want to give us the burgundy clamp just to see the fact that we are low there. Okay, hang on. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, okay. If we're high on green, we're high on blue, and low on burgundy, where did I place that clamp? I placed it downstream. I placed it right at that junction spot where the floor wiring harness meets the splice where it goes off to the right tail and the left tail. So what can we determine from that? What can we determine? We would have to deduce that the short may be before the spot, maybe it's before spot 5. What I'll do is I'm going to move the clamp a little more upstream in the harness. The harness is pretty long. If you were on, on a car, you're looking at 6 or 7 feet of wiring, and then we're going to see what happens. The difference between our captures, depending on where the short is. The short will always be in the same spot. So let me get the scope rolling, and we're gonna position the reconnaissance clamp. It'll be on the run to a different spot. Okay, I will stop the scope, and we know position 5 went to ground, so what does it look like now? Okay, you can see the difference? Okay, we're high on green, we're high on blue, and we're high on burgundy, which we would almost infer, we have to say that, okay. Okay, let me get back on this. Okay. Looks like basically we know we're high on blue, we know we're high on burgundy, and we know that, let me do a little flip-a-rolla here. We're high on green. You can see the green right here. Hope you can see that. We were low on red, and we are low on gold, which we know that circuit, we can determine that circuit is not our problem. We pretty much knew that in the previous test, but what we can infer from this is that the spot of the short, the short is after our placement of the reconnaissance clamp. So the clamp is placed more upstream of spot 5, and as spot 5 copped a ride to ground, we saw current go elevate through that purple clamp, and also the blue clamp and the green clamp. So we would narrow down our spot where the short is. So I'm going to put the reconnaissance clamp back to its original spot, because we want to keep each short circuit the same. Okay. Let us back to normal. Start the scope. Okay. Shit. Okay. All right. So look at our screen. Look at our situation. We're down to 2. We're at spot 7 and 6. If this thing had a ground, and I've seen over my years, I've seen a lot of shorts in bulb sockets. Those are the ones where the bulb socket gets crusty and it shorts internal. So we're gonna go and we're gonna create a short to ground in spot 6. Now, as far as our setup, we're back to our original setup, and we're just gonna see what the situation does. Spot 6. Okay, we stop it. Look at your illustration. Okay, what do we got here? Hope you can see that. We're high on blue and we're high on green. We're low on burgundy because remember where we are. We're back at that fuse box. Low on red, low on gold, and low on burgundy. So look at your schematic. You'd have to say that most likely the current's flowing through obviously through green, through blue, not yellow and red, and not through purple. So we get, that reconnaissance clamp. We're going to get that, and we're going to go back to we're going to say midway on the floor harness. See what happens. Situation 6. That's same. The short's in the same spot. I just moved our purple clamp, our reconnaissance clamp, on the floor harness about midway. Let's see what happens when situation 6 goes to ground. Let's start the scope. Okay, let's stop the scope. Go back, roll it back, and see if we got. Okay, we got elevation. Okay, ooh, we got elevation on blue, we got green, and now we got elevation on our reconnaissance clamp, on our E channel, a purple channel. So that's got to tell us something. That's got to tell us that our short is downstream of our reconnaissance clamp. It's somewhere on the downstream side. We really don't know. So we want to do is I want to go to the I would take that reconnaissance clamp and I'll just pick a side in the rear to kind of isolate where that circuit is going to ground. So let's take our reconnaissance clamp. We got plenty of length because we set it up this way because this clamp has to be able to go pretty much fore and aft, the whole length of the vehicle, kind of like a power probe, same kind of situation. And okay, I got a reconnaissance clamp. I put it in the trunk and I picked a side. I picked left side. I picked in theory I wouldn't know where the short is. I'm kind of narrowing in on it. I picked the left side of the trunk. If you look at the 7 number, go about 3 inches toward the positive side of the car, toward upstream, toward the battery, so to speak. and that's where I put the clamp. Now, if the clamp is there, our short is still at 6. Okay, it's in the same spot. We'll see what happens. What can we infer from that? We may not get information, and then again, we may. So we're going to go to ground at 6. Our clamp is placed on the left side. That's just a choice, because if we were diagnosing, we really wouldn't know. We're kind of inferring or deducing where the short is. So we short. Short at spot 6. Look at your schematic and look at 6. And let's stop the scope and see what that tells us. Okay. All right, we're high on blue, we're high on green. We're low on the burgundy. So what I do in this situation, let me pick another side of the car. Let me get to the right side and I'll see what happens. We can say that it's pretty much not flowing through our test point on a reconnaissance clamp. So we know from that we're going to narrow it down. So let's go to the right side of the trunk harness. Start the scope, and then we'll create a short at our spots, our spot 6. Okay. We'll stop the scope. We'll talk about it. Okay, we're high on blue, high on green, low on the reconnaissance clamp, low on red, low on yellow, which we would suspect, we would expect in the situation. I want to talk a little about current probe placement. I am very, very close to the bulb. I'm a ½ an inch from the bulb socket. So, you know, I talked about sometimes these shorts are in the socket itself. They get the green crusties and the crossover and all that. I can tell that the short, which is position 6, is more upstream. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my clamp just up about 1.5 feet to kind of just keep narrowing in on the spot where the short is. So I'm going to move my clamp. Okay. Turn the scope on, and I just tell you that what I did is I placed my clamp farther up the circuit, maybe 2.5 foot of wire in that trunk, because I want to see what happens, because our short is going to be in the same spot. That's spot 6. Let's see what happens. Okay, I will stop the scope. Okay, what can we determine? Okay, now we got elevation. We're high on blue, high on green. I'm sounding like a broken record. Low on gold, low on red. Look at your schematic. The reconnaissance clamp is high. It's up. That tells me something. We're narrowing in on the spot on the circuit. So basically, we would pretty much find that short if we just, you know, pulled the loom apart and started getting a flashlight and looked at that wire where that insulation would be compromised every now and then, just touching ground. So we're down to one more. We're we're going to go back to the first original setup. Reconnaissance clamp will go back to N31 coming out of the underdash fuse relay box. Okay, now we got the scope running, tail lights are on, parking lights are on, license plate lights are on, internal illumination is on, and we're down to spot 7. That is spot 7 on the circuit. So we're going to see what does it look like if had that been our short. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, let's stop the scope and analyze it. Go back, roll it back. Okay, what we determined, okay, we know where we're going to ground. We're going to ground on spot 7. Well, let's look at our scope. High on blue, high on green, low on red, low on gold, and low on purple, the reconnaissance clamp. So we know that if the circuit went to ground at spot 7, we would say that it didn't go to ground at N31, it didn't go to ground at H13 or H14. We got to infer that most likely it went to ground between F9 and the back of the vehicle. So the reconnaissance clamp will be moved. It will be moved to the central location floor wiring harness. Okay, so we got our reconnaissance clamp about mid-circuit at the floor, where our ground is at spot 7. So let's go to ground on 7. ENDP. Okay, we're high. We're high on Burgundy. Let me blow that up. Okay. Okay, we're high on green, high on reconnaissance, which is purple, and high on blue. So we know our short is downstream of our clamp point where our reconnaissance clamp is. So we're going to go to the trunk with the reconnaissance clamp and place it and see what happens. Okay, let's get back to a normal size. Okay, start the scope. Okay, we're going to go to ground on spot 7. Our clamp is placed pretty much about 2 feet from the bulb, mid harness. Let's stop the scope and analyze. Okay, we're high on burgundy, high on blue, high on green, low on red, and low on gold. So, what we can look at our schematic, we know that we're getting close in on that short. So I'm going to place the reconnaissance clamp and get right up to the bulb. Remember those bulbs, sometimes they, that's where the short is. I'm going to get right on the bulb. Start the scope. And look at spot 7 on your schematic. That's where it's going to go to ground. It's going to every now and then hit the ground. Stop the scope and let's go back. Okay, let's look at what we got here. Analyze. High on blue, high on green, low on red, low on gold, and low on our reconnaissance clamp. Let's kind of elevate that, give it some stretch so you can see. We're definitely low on our reconnaissance clamp. So that tells us something, that circuit went to ground before the placement of the reconnaissance clamp. So it's definitely, we're narrowing it down to about 3 foot of wire. We should find that insulation is compromised and you know, tickling ground. In the real world, we know if this were a car and we were in this, we would have to shake harnesses, shake you know, shake the wiring, maybe bounce the car, and see if we saw a current elevation ever so slight, and we would narrow in on where that circuit is shorted. This short is a lot quicker than it would blow a fuse. So I'm going to close this video out, and let me just show one more thing here. We're on the setup, and this is that is this guy here. We got to give him the MVP, you know. That's our reconnaissance clamp, and that's really valuable. And when you're amp clamp diagnosing, you want to make that one designated guy a lot of slack. I got about 12 foot of slack there, so that guy's got to be mobile. I know it's a lot of work, but nonetheless, there's always one guy. Thank you very much, and I'm going to close it out. Best to you, Gary, Mr. Ship, and the staff. We wish you all the best, and I'll be uploading one probably tomorrow. Thanks a lot, and all the best.